John Lennon book from the dude that Nancy turned me on to on Substack. Uh, just trying to get ready. Gonna have a little time here well, I'm still unpacking and getting my stuff ready, but we're about to get snowed and iced in apparently for the next week. So after I get done here at work, I'm going to go stock up, hunker down, and hopefully crank out the rest of these after shows so we can get caught up, and then we'll be ready for the new stuff. This is the LaBianca after show. In the very first podcast that I did about the Manson case, I, alluded to I want to do a show specifically about the LaBiancas the second night, because the first one I did was really about the first night. I'll put the link to the LaBianca episode from Nancy's channel in the comments here. But I want this one to kind of be able to stand alone as well. So we'll run down real quick what the official narrative is supposed to be right now, and then I'll intersperse in the after show. I'll have clips from other episodes as well, so we can kind of get a bit of a composite on what we've got going on here. So here's what Wikipedia says about the LaBianca murders. The four murderers, which they mean the four murderers from the first night: Sadie, Tex, Linda, and Patricia Krenwinkel. Four murderers plus Charles Manson, Leslie Van Houten, and Clem Grogan went for a drive the following night. I'm just going to stop right here. The wording on this is incredible. The four murderers plus Charles Manson, Leslie Van Houten, and Clem Grogan went out for a drive the following night. Manson was allegedly displeased with the panic and flight of the victims in the previous night's murders. He told Kasabian to drive to a house at 3301 Waverly Drive in the Los Feliz section of Los Angeles, located next door to a home where Manson and family members had attended a party the previous year. That home was the home of Harold True, and he knew the Manson girls pretty well, and Charlie himself, and Dennis Wilson, and Terry Melcher. Anyway, according to Atkins and Kasabian, Manson disappeared up the driveway and returned to say that he had tied up the house's occupants. Then Watson, Krenwinkel, and Van Houten went in. Watson claims in his autobiography that Manson went up alone, then returned to take him up to the house with him. Manson pointed out a sleeping man through a window, and the two entered through the unlocked back door. Hold on. Did Manson go in and tie them up? Or did he point at the sleeping man through the window, as Tex claims? The two then entered through the unlocked back door. So did Tex go in and tie him up? I don't know. Rosemary was brought into the living room from the bedroom, and Watson covered the couple's heads with pillowcases, which he bound in place with lamp cords. Manson left, and Krenwinkel and Van Houten entered the house. Watson had complained to Manson earlier of the inadequacy of the previous night's weapons. So why did they come unarmed this night anyway? Watson sent the women from the kitchen to the bedroom, where Rosemary LaBianca had been returned, while he went to the living room and began stabbing Leno LaBianca with a chrome-plated bayonet. The first thrust went into his throat. Watson heard a scuffle in the bedroom and went in there to discover Rosemary LaBianca keeping the women at bay by swinging the lamp tied to her neck. Which doesn't make sense because, again, in Helter Skelter, Bugliosi claims that Rosemary heard Tex Watson stabbing and killing Leno LaBianca, and that's why she started fighting and swinging this lamp. Which also, if she's swinging the lamp, it's tied to her neck. Like, I don't see how that works, because, they wrapped it around. Anyway, Tex Watson heard a scuffle in the bedroom, went in there to discover Rosemary LaBianca, keeping the women at bay by swinging. So Tex goes in the bedroom, stabbed her several times with the bayonet, then returned to the living room and resumed attacking Leno. He stabbed a total of 12 times. He then carved the word war into his abdomen. Watson returned to the bedroom and found Krenwinkel stabbing Rosemary with a knife from the kitchen. Van Houten stabbed her approximately 16 times in the back and the exposed buttocks. Van Houten claimed at trial that Rosemary LaBianca was already dead during the stabbing. Evidence showed that many of the 41 stab wounds had in fact been inflicted postmortem. Those are the ones that Leslie did. Watson then cleaned off the bayonet and showered, while Krenwinkel wrote "Rise" and "Death to Pigs" on the walls and "Helter Skelter, Smelter Delter" on the refrigerator door. All in LaBianca's blood. Leno's. She gave Leno LaBianca 14 puncture wounds with an ivory-handled two-tine carving fork, which she left jutting out of his stomach. She also planted a steak knife in his throat. Meanwhile, Manson drove the other 3 family members who had departed Spawn Ranch with him that evening to the Venice home of the Lebanese actor Saladin Nader. Manson left them there and drove back to Spawn Ranch, leaving them and the LaBianca killers to hitchhike home, because he wanted them to get caught. According to Kasabian, Manson wanted his followers to murder Nader in his apartment, but Kasabian claims that she thwarted this murder by deliberately knocking on the wrong apartment door and waking a stranger. The group abandoned the murder plan and left, but Atkins, ever classy, defecated in the stairwell on the way out.
And basically, this is the sequence of events that I've taken from Texas trial transcript. This is what Bugliosi said, basically. Right. So this is the sequence of events from Charles Watson's trial transcript. On the night of August the 9th, 1969, Charles Manson tells the killers from the previous night that they had been too messy the night before and he was going to show them how to do it. He takes Linda Kasabian, who's driving, Charles Watson, Tex, and Susan Atkins, and Patricia Krenwinkel and Leslie Van Houten. They go to 3267 Waverly Drive in the Los Feliz Griffith Park area. A year earlier, Manson had on several prior occasions visited the former resident in that address named Harold True. Manson got out of the car alone, walked to and entered the home next door to Harold True's former residence, being the residence of Leno and Rosemary LaBianca at 3301 Waverly Drive. When Manson returned to the car several minutes later, he called Watson, Krenwinkel and Van Houten out of the car. He told them that there were 2 people inside tied up, though the evidence showed only Leno actually had his hands tied up. Then he instructed them on how to murder the victims. He told them not to cause panic and fear in the victims the way they had done the night before. Watson, Krenwinkel and Van Houten then entered the LaBianca residence and they brutally murdered Leno and Rosemary LaBianca, stabbing Mr. and Mrs. LaBianca a total of 67 times. They carved the word war on Leno LaBianca's stomach. They printed the words Helter Skelter in Leno's blood on the refrigerator door. They also printed the word Rise and Death to Pigs in his blood on the living room wall. Mr. Katsuyama conducted the autopsies of Mr. and Mrs. LaBianca, and they died from multiple stab wounds. Right. And this is an aerial photo showing you how close to the LaBianca's house Harold True's house is. Like Harold True's house is the white house on the left, and the LaBianca's house is on the right. Right. Sorry, just looking at the chat, seeing if anyone's got any comments so far. But that's just like the overall sequence of events that we're generally told happened, without going into detail about how they were actually murdered. And this shows the... Right. And yeah, this is basically my diagram of the crime scene that I made from the floor plan of the house that I found. This must be a floor plan that's from like a more recent sketch of the house from when they were selling it, basically. But you can see I've shown on there where Helter Skelter was written on the fridge, assuming the fridge is in the same place, and looking at the kitchen. I think there's only one logical place you could stick the refrigerator in that kitchen, so it probably is. And that's where Helter Skelter was written. And Leno was found in the living room. I've kind of placed his body a bit too far over. He was like behind the sofa, so you wouldn't be able to see him. As soon as you walked in the room, you'd have to step in and around the sofa to see him. But that's about where Leno was lying. And Rosemary was in the bedroom. And yeah, it looks like she was trying to crawl towards the door. Very sad. And we'll probably come back to this slide a few times. Yeah, and I will show you better pictures of the crime scene as well. This is just to give an illustration. You can hardly see Rise in this picture. It's written in tiny writing above the corner of the door. But I'll show you a better picture of that in a minute. Right, and this is the injuries to Rosemary. See, she was only stabbed in the front a couple of times, once in her left breast and a couple of times around her stomach. And the actual fatal wound, if you look at her back, on her neck, like the bottom wound on her neck, like on level with her shoulder, that wound there actually severed her spine, and that was the fatal wound. And these other wounds on her back up here, if you look at the crime scene photo, I won't be showing the actual photos of their body, but you can see there's a lot of blood that came out of these wounds at the back, suggesting she was still alive when this happened to her. And yeah, so she was never stabbed in the heart as well, and you can see there was also a wound on her face as well. Someone slashed her face. And she was stabbed so hard in the back it severed her spine, and this wound was considered fatal. That's the fatal wound. And there were 22 wounds to the top of her back and 14 on her lower portion of her back. 4 wounds on the front of her body and 1 on her face. It says in the police report she had strands of brown coloured hair in her left hand, which could have come from Leslie or Krenwinkel, couldn't it, or Patricia? And then Leno's injuries. He was found with the knife still stuck right through his neck. They found when they took the pillowcase off his head. And he had war carved into his stomach. And there was extensive ligature marks on his wrists and skin slippage. So this suggests that he wasn't tied gently, like is suggested. And also, the pillowcase, apparently, when he took the pillowcase off his head, they found the knife. So that suggests the pillowcase was put over his head after he was dead, not before. So I've seen other other articles talking about this crime, suggesting that they had pillowcases put over their head straight away. But that's not when the pillowcase went over his head. It looks like they did that after he died for some reason. And also, if you look at the crime scene photos, you can see the wounds in his body, like where war is carved, and the wounds in his stomach. There's not a lot of blood around them, suggesting that was done after he died.
So that's the official narrative. And I mean, even just reading that in Wikipedia, you can see some holes in it. And we only dealt with the first night of the first episode. Well, here we go. This is the second night.
desert blind, whispers of a twisted mind, found paradise in hell, stories only he could tell. Dream followed his unholy scheme, promised lands through bloody hands, swept beneath the devil's plan. Manson shadows on the wall, closer to the fall. Twisted preacher in the night, spreading chaos with delight. his eyes in a devil's glance. Heaven's shattered by his word, preaching madness so absurd. Hope crushed in wicked fire, lost soul swayed by desire. In the dark they found their king, caught in webs his lies would bring. Children's laughter turns to cries, echoes of the night's disguise, promises of pain and chains, left them wandering insane.
Right. Yeah, and I was going to stop there, and I was going to show you the. Yes, these are the better photos, basically. There's another picture up here. Yes, this shows you how close Harold True's house is to the LaBianca house there. That's just the front of their house. That's them. Police outside their house. This one's a weird one, look, with all the fog in it. More close-ups of the house, and this one's interesting. You see the view of Harold True's house from the LaBianca house, the one to the right here. That's how much of the Harold True's house you can see from the LaBianca house, and that's the cord they used to tie Leno with, and a watch that was apparently taken. It was one of the only things they took was Rosemary's watch, and this is the wallet that they found that Linda supposedly hid in the her driving license. The contents of her wallet, basically, they're showing you here. Her athletic club membership. This is all on CIDrive.com in their photos, and this is the gas station. But I think was this where the newspaper stand was? What does it say? Oh, this is where Manson stopped, sorry. And got her to leave the wallet in the woman's restroom. So he must have taken that while he was in the house, basically, tying up Leno and Rosemary. And this must be the toilet cistern where they left the wallet, yeah. And this is their front door. So I thought, when I saw the picture of the word rise, I thought that was not a front door, but that is their front door. And this is the knife that was through Leno's neck. And an ashtray that was next to him. You see blood on the sofa there, by the looks of it. Yeah, that's more, I think, of the ligature that was round Leno's wrists, I think. Is that? Yes. Yes, and the tags are from the retrial of Leslie Van Houten, yeah. More pictures of the living room. No pictures of his actual body in these photos, though. More pictures of the living room. That's the fork that they used to carve war in him, and that was left sticking out of his stomach. This is the bedroom where Rosemary was found. The side entrance, this is where Charlie is supposed to have walked in, I think. Yes, the side door he's meant to have used to walk in. This is the lamp cord that was around Rosemary's neck. And just more pictures of the outside of the house. Oh, yeah, and this is blood by the front door, a tiny spot of blood. And there's a close-up picture of that there. But I wonder there if that's one of the killers was bleeding, if one of the killers got cut somewhere. And that's Death to Pigs, a better picture of Death to Pigs on the wall. Rise, and you can see the word rise written better here. That's their front door, apparently. And that is, what is that? that's the cord around the neck of Leno. It was around the and you can see the writing on the refrigerator there, Helter Skelter. That's a better picture of the writing on the fridge. They'd written Helter Skelter, so they'd misspelt it, put an A in it. It's Patricia Krenwinkel is thought to have done all the writing. Well, she admitted to it, apparently. And the coin collection, so it's a bit weird they didn't steal more since they're supposed to be desperate for money. But looking at that, coins are very, very heavy, so that would be very difficult to take with them. And yeah, more blood in the bathroom, which makes me wonder if one of the killers was hurt. A bookshelf. Yeah, all these guns as well. They never tried to take the guns. They never took any of the guns. And that's it for those pictures.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you were saying when Kelly Girl, when did Tex leave? He went to Barker Ranch. They sent him to Barker Ranch first to wreck it out, apparently, and he waited with them. I think he ran from Barker Ranch, but they went from there to another one, didn't they? An even further one. Or was Barker Ranch the last one? Like, what was the first one they ran to? They ran from Spahn Ranch to one ranch, and Tex went to that one. And then when they left that one, I think that's when Tex fucks off. And then they go out to one that's right in the fucking middle of nowhere. I think that is Barker Ranch, isn't it? The very last one. The one they nicked at.
Well, didn't they go to Myers Ranch at some
Myers
point?
Ranch, that's it. Yeah, Tex went to Myers Ranch with them, I think. Or well, he got, something like that.
Charlie gave...
Tex wasn't nicked with them at Barker Ranch. He had gone by the time they got nicked, hadn't he? Yeah.
Myers Ranch was Capistrano's family's ranch. Yeah. And Charlie gave her grandma a gold record, a Beach Boys gold record that he got for 2020 for Never Learn Not to Love.
Yeah.
Just stay there. Yep.
Right, so what actually happened after Charlie left? Tex is left in the living room with Leno tied. Patricia and Leslie, and Rosemary's actually not tied. Her hands are never actually tied, and there was no ligature marks on her wrists or anything. Patricia and Leslie go into the bedroom with Rosemary. Rosemary thinks they're just being robbed and is offering them clothing and valuables, saying, "You can have anything you want. We'll give you anything you want. I won't call the police." Leslie says her mentioning the police makes her start to feel panicky. And when Tex begins to stab Leno in the living room, he screams. And Rosemary begins to scream. And Leslie fights with her while Patricia goes to the kitchen to get the knives. Her first trial, Leslie says Rosemary picked up a lamp and started to try to hit her with it. She blocked it and got it away from her. And she wrestles her onto the bed and puts a pillowcase over her head at this point and is trying to keep her calm. She says she can't remember if the lamp cord was tied around her neck or hands, but it was found tied around her neck. And Leno also had a pillowcase over his head, and both pillowcases from the bed were gone. It's unclear when they placed the pillowcase over Leno's head. And he also had a throw pillow from the sofa over his face. Look at the actual crime scene photos. When Patricia returns with the knives, they both begin stabbing and cutting the lady up, or so Leslie testified at her first trial. They needed to call Tex for help. It looks like Rosemary was trying to crawl towards the door when he walked in. Her fatal wound was to the back of her neck, severing her spine. After she's dead, they continue to stab her in the back and buttocks, 22 times in her upper back and 14 times in her lower back. Leslie had said she inflicted the wounds on her lower back post-mortem. They go into the living room, where Leno is presumably already dead. His fatal wound is the knife right through his neck. Patricia Krenwinkel apparently carves the word war into his stomach and leaves the fork she used sticking out of his stomach, and is thought to have done the writing on the walls and the refrigerator. She's supposed to have admitted to it in a police report. They hung around the house for a while, eating food in the kitchen. Watermelon rinds were found in the sink, and one of them is even said to have taken a shower before they leave, and then they hitchhike back to the ranch, leaving behind many valuables they could have stolen.
Leslie had to lie in her parole hearings, because if she didn't endorse Helter Skelter, they weren't ever going to let her out, right?
Yeah, well, she had to make it look like she was entirely just there for Charlie, and she only stabbed a dead woman, and could never admit she loved Bobby as well, and she went along because she wanted to free Bobby and that, because that makes her look like,
They had to leave Bobby Beausoleil completely out of it, the same way that when Tex went to trial, they left the LaBiancas out of his line of questioning and stuff. They didn't even go there because, there's just way too many ties there outside of Charlie, even with Joe Dorgan, just that alone would be like, oh, well, maybe it was,
Yeah.
Manson also summoned Leslie Van Houten, who had not gone the first night.
He asked me, do you believe enough in what I say to know that this is something that has to be done, or something to that effect? And I said, yes, I do. I didn't walk right up and say, may I go? But I think everything on my face said that.
Once again, a group drove toward Los Angeles, only this time, Manson was at the wheel. Manson told us he chose this residence, the home of a supermarket chain owner, because he'd once been to a party at the house next door. Inside, Rosemary LaBianca was getting ready for bed, while her husband Leno was reading the Sunday paper with its headlines about the Tate murders. Then Manson walked in the door.
And I seen a guy sitting on a couch. And I laughed at it. He said, hi. I said, hi. And Tex came in.
Manson gave Tex Watson leather laces from around his neck to tie up Leno LaBianca. Then Manson left without leaving any fingerprints.
I told the other dudes, I'll see you later, man. You know, like, I'll catch it on the run, man. I'm gone, man. And I split, man.
Did he leave instructions?
Yeah. He told Tex, don't scare them like last night.
Yeah, I remember something like that, but I don't remember exactly the right words. If you're going to go to war and you're fighting your enemy and you kill him when he's afraid, you know, it's a bad omen. It's bad.
Why did you leave? Why did you leave them there?
Okay. I keep a close watch on this heart of mine. I walk a line.
You knew murder was going to take place and you weren't going to be there.
I don't think about murder.
Is that why you left?
No, that ain't why I left. I left. What? I don't know what I was thinking. I left because I left.
You knew nothing about it?
I didn't know. I did not know.
Manson was gone by the time Pat Krenwinkel and Leslie Van Houten made their way up the driveway.
The minute we walked in the house, it became clear that this was not what I had imagined. You know, before that it had always been an abstract kind of thing. And when it was the real thing, I was absolutely torn in half.
Watson, armed with a bayonet, stayed in the living room with the bound and gagged Leno LaBianca.
Pat and I took Mrs. LaBianca into the bedroom. And the sounds of Mr. LaBianca dying came into the bedroom. Horrible, guttural sounds. She started calling out to him and yelling for him. And at that moment, for a brief moment, I realized, you know, these are people that love each other.
And Tex came in and killed her.
And then Tex turned me around and handed me the knife, and he said, do something. Because Manson had told him to make sure that all of us got our hands dirty. And I stabbed Mrs. LaBianca in the lower back about 16 times.
And there was no pity?
No mercy, no. No.
Before they left, Tex Watson stopped to take a shower. The women took a snack of chocolate milk and cheese. And then...
It had been said by Charlie to make sure that there was all these witchy signs. And I went, and Mr. LaBianca was already dead. And I had gotten a fork, and I stabbed him with a fork repeatedly, and eventually left the fork in him. And then I wrote words all over the house.
Helter Skelter.
Helter Skelter.
What else was there? Yeah, there's always been the rumor, yeah, that there's a link between Tex, that Tex knew the boyfriend of Susan Struthers. But yeah, I'm going to get there because that warrants a whole stream of itself, because that is really, really odd what Susan LaBerge does years later, who is Susan Struthers, later becomes Susan LaBerge. And on one of Tex's parole hearings, she shows up and says that they should free him, makes a statement for him. Yeah, it comes from Alice LaBianca, guys. They heard that Susan and Rosemary were dealing drugs. That is something that was said. And yeah, probably Joe Dorgan as well. But there's always been like a rumor that Tex knew Susan LaBianca, and because of the way this crime went down, because the dogs didn't bark and all that, and they didn't, there was no sounds of distress and screaming and all that. It makes me wonder: was it meant to be a staged robbery? But they spun on them and murdered them. They weren't supposed to kill them. They were just supposed to tie them up and rob them and just leave them. And then the kids were meant to come in the morning and free them, but they murdered them. Maybe. You wait till I read what it says about Rosemary in the police report, even. You know what I mean? It's not that unlikely. LSD wasn't even illegal until what? The mid-60s, was it? Some of her relatives said she was dealing acid. It wasn't, just in police reports. Their relatives believed it. Yeah, that's it, because like I say, getting into Susan Struthers, that's a whole other thing. Yeah, well, they were being burgled repeatedly. They were being broken into, so they were probably calling the police and asking the police to watch their house, but they were scared as well. That there's loads of sources reporting they were scared for their lives. And they had told the kids that it wasn't safe to come to their house, the area they were living in. And we're not told that. Well, I just read out the list of suspects, didn't I? There was that mental case. Did you not hear the guy who had the mental health issues who threatened to cut his wife's head off? He was living just behind their house. And they were talking about all those burglars that operated in that area. Drug-crazed burglars that were in the area, And pot parties in the first stream. I talked about Alice LaBianca getting a letter from Leno saying that a pot party was broken up just next door to their house. And we know that Harold True lived in the house right next door to them. And the family actually lived there with their black bus and that, It was a dangerous area. It wasn't a safe area. That was what it's all about. Yeah. It's a typical suburban couple. Who had massive gambling debts to the mafia and fucking also, well, wait till we get into Rosemary and all her apparent lesbian lovers that she had. And it gets into how, it sounds like Leno couldn't get out what he's described as sexually cold by one woman. And then they say that how it didn't look like Leno and Rosemary were having any sex. And lots of people suspected Rosemary was having an affair. Yeah, that's it with speed, wasn't it? Until everyone got so high on the speed. That's it, I'm not going to read any more out tonight. Because it's too much information all in one go. So yeah, next week I'll talk about Rosemary. So that's when it gets more interesting. Yeah, I'll probably end this now actually, and I'll come back and do an after stream. So yeah, thanks for coming everyone anyway. And I'll edit this, it'll be up tomorrow afternoon. I've done a Witches of Mendocino show. We've already done it. It's the Murders of Clyde Delaney. That one is the Mendocino Witches one. Blue collar criminal, and Leno was the white collar criminal. Rosemary was another one of the wig salesmen as well, weren't she? Like every fucking person in this fucking story for some reason as well. And I kind of think, maybe. Yeah. Yeah, I meant to mention at the beginning as well. If you're a new subscriber as well, there's the bloody playlist of the Charles Manson case. And I've put all the events in order of when they happened. For people to be able to work out why the hell these murders happened the way they did. And to be able to see the patterns and how unlikely the helter-skelter narrative sounds when you look at how everything pans out. It's important to see how they all happen, because they play down the Bernard Crow thing. They don't want you to. There's lots of things they don't want you to look at. They just want you to concentrate on certain aspects. It quickly falls apart when you look at the whole thing, and you can see that they were lying desperately about something.
So we really didn't talk about the LaBiancas much in the after show. This was in the aftermath of the Nick Reiner thing. And so there was a lot of discussion about that and other things. So I'm going to make that a separate episode. I wanted to keep this LaBianca oriented so that we could have this be about that and kind of look at what we have going on there. And so I've put the link to the original episode in the description, and then I'm going to make the Nick Reiner stuff its own episode. So appreciate it. Like and subscribe. Go over to Nancy's page, like and subscribe there, as well as she has a lot of great stuff on her Substack. So go there and check that out. Give her a subscription, buy her a coffee, all those things, and we'll see you on Sundays.